To do the collar for the Love Child dress, you have the two pieces that have been block interfaced, and you have the two sets of collars, and the first thing is to put right sides together, match up the center points, pin the short curve all the way and do a 0.5 centimetre seam allowance to join the top two. Once you've stitched the two pieces together, you're going to understitch. So you just choose a side. If there's a side of the print that you like better, the side that you understitch to will be closest to the neck. So if I wanted to make this the outer, I'm going to understitch. So pressing the seam towards the side that you don't want to see, and you're stitching as close as you can to that seam line. So the piece that you understitched to, that's where you're going to fold up the 0.5 centimetre and press. This is going to finish off the collar when it all gets attached to the bodice. You could use a hot ruler to get it a bit more accurate, but it's just important that it's on the side that you've understitched to. Once you've pressed all around, then you can just give the collar a press at the top just to get it ready to attach to the bodice, making sure that you don't unpress what you've already just done on the other side. Just makes it a little bit easier when you actually go to construct it all onto the bodice. I've been trying to refine a technique that gets a really even collar, and I don't mind this idea that when you fold it up the hem to go closest to the neck, before you stitch it onto the bodice, you just kind of give yourself a guide as to where that fold line is going to sit. You know, it's kind of tricky with 5mm seam allowances and curves and all of that type of thing. So I just find if I pencil this mark in, I can use the 5mm seam allowance as a guide, but it just helps me know that if there's been discrepancies in cutting or it's pulled a little bit, I kind of know when I go to fold that collar over that I know where that fold line is going to sit, and I'm not going to get any weird extra. It's going to sit a lot better if I have that guide. It's kind of what I've found. So to attach the collar, which you've prepared with, you've folded under and pressed, understitched, you've got the centre marked, so you've sewn your facing on to the front and joined your shoulder seams and finished them. So I like to start at the back, and I match the centre back bodice to the centre back collar, and then match up the notch onto the shoulder. And then come around to the front, and you need to leave about 0.5 centimetre to 1 centimetre to finish that off at the front. and then work the curves. Making sure that you've got that facing and the bodice all lined up. You can stitch that together, which probably makes it a little bit easier, or at least pin it together. But I like to get those anchor points in first rather than starting at one end and then kind of just pinning it around, because often you'll end up short. So this way you know where you have to finish, and then you just work the curves to the collar. And you do the same on the other side. So you've pinned it all the way around. You've got space on the end of the collar. To finish it, you need at least 1/2 centimetre, and it's all even. There's no puckers, and you're going to use the pencil mark if you did it, or you're going to use a 5mm seam allowance. I'm going to use that as my guide to stitch it to the bodice. And now you want to give this seam a press towards the collar, so away from the bodice. So now you've got this neat collar. You've used the when you did the markings to make sure that then when you fold that over, it sits just beyond that stitch line, which that is looking pretty good, but we need to finish off these ends. So I've made some ties just by cutting a 1-inch strip, running it through a bias binding maker, and then stitching it close to the edge. You can use tassels, that's really up to you. The length is up to you as well. And the way to attach these is you want to place it so you've got the bodice, you've got the right side of the collar, and we have to enclose it in this end bit here so that when we flip it out, the ties on the other side. So I like to put the stitched line at the bottom, and I like to line it up to the bottom of the collar and just pin it in place. We're going to incorporate this tie in this seam. So you've got the folded edge, which is going to sit just at that fold line, because this is all going to be neatened. We're going to stitch. You're going to line up the edge of this bodice so that you go straight and you hit that point. You can follow the line of the bodice if you wanted a different angle for the finish of your collar, but to have the straight edge, you just follow down parallel to the edge of the raw, but you're aiming for this point right there where that meets, so that you get a really clean straight line. It's quite fine work, but that is the goal, to stitch down, incorporating the tie. You can do a double back and finishing right at that point. to take out some bulk. And turn it out. And there's the necktie, and there's that really clean, straight line. Now when you go to fold over to neaten all of this up, there's a few little seams and folds. I found that if you incorporate that fold under that seam and then come down, you get a much cleaner finish than trying to leave that on top and fold it under. So if you tuck this one underneath and then bring the folded edge down, that's a neater finish. So the final bit of the collar is to attach this folded edge, this pressed edge to the inside of the bodice. So I find the easiest way to do this is to pin from the front, because you're going to stitch from the front. You're going to stitch here. The fold should be just sitting just below that stitch line, and I pin in the ditch and then check that I'm catching it on the other side. So I just work my way around, because I'm not going to stitch in the ditch. You can if you want to, but I find that I stitch just above that, and it's kind of almost looks like a neat top stitch, but I know that if I pin and I catch it in the ditch, that I'm going to be good to get it all the way around. So I usually do the ends first, just so that I don't end up with any kind of weird puckering or anything, and it's just a matter of pinning and checking that I'm catching it all the way around. And it doesn't always work, but majority of the time it does. And then if you're going to put any kind of label or anything, this is the point at which you do it. So I would find my centre back and pop the label in and just incorporate it in that stitching line. I just will do the same thing with the pinning. Just make sure that if I pin in the ditch, that I catch it. I actually like to start a little bit in from the edge of the collar and then back stitch, because I find that I get less of that weird stitching underneath. If I start a little bit further in, I'm stitching just above the fold line, the seam line, kind of feeling that I'm catching everything that I need to catch on the other side. And that is the collar done. Probably the hardest part of this dress. Now it's just a matter of joining all the tiers and putting the sleeves in.